My name is Sylvia. I am 28 years old and have a creative job at a gaming company in New York. On the surface, it seems like I'm living a trouble-free life, but in reality, my family situation is quite complicated. A year ago, the company my father worked for unexpectedly went bankrupt, so I stopped living alone and started living in my hometown with my parents and my sister Frida. Our household needs my income to maintain itself. Sylvia. Frida said she wants pork steaks for dinner tomorrow night. My mother started the conversation. I sighed inwardly and replied, "Oh, and we are running out of money for food. We can't even afford to buy pork loin. Can you contribute a little more to the food budget?" I frowned and said, "We're already out of food money for this month. It's not even halfway through yet, though." That's when Frida joined the conversation. "Big sis, you're not contributing enough for food." "What are you talking about? I'm already contributing $3,000, so it should be more than enough." Frida snorted and said, "Big sis, prices have gone up, and $3,000 just isn't enough for a family of 4 anymore." I couldn't contain my anger and retorted, "Just $3,000. If you have a complaint, why don't you work and earn some food money yourself? It's hard to find a job, so I feel sorry for Frida," my mother said, taking my sister's side. I thought bitterly to myself, my sister uses job hunting as an excuse, but in reality she's unemployed and squandering her days away. Moreover, the living expenses I provide are being given to my sister as pocket money by my mother. Stop it already. If it's really that difficult to live, how about we sell this house and move to Mom's hometown? We might find work there, and life could be. No way. I don't want to go back to that hometown. My mother immediately opposed the idea. Our grandmother runs a successful Italian restaurant in Queens where we could work, and with free access to delicious pizza and pasta, our lives would certainly be easier. However, grandmother is very strict, and especially when it comes to making pizza, she becomes even stricter. My mother dislikes this and tries to avoid the physical labor of making pizza. My father always says this: "Why do we seek grandmother's help so quickly when we are all trying to support this life together? That is what you call being spoiled." I wanted to scream inside. It's ridiculous to say that I, who earns the living expenses, am spoiled when I have a sister who does not want to work. I think Frida should look for a part-time job too. She is already 26, and there are many people who work part-time while job hunting, I suggested. But my mother quickly argued against it. "No, Frida is helping around the house, so she doesn't have time for a part-time job." What? What are you talking about? I have never seen Frida do any housework, my father interjected. Frida carries the dishes to the sink after meals and does her own laundry. Sometimes she even massages my shoulders. I began to feel angry. The housework that my father describes Frida doing is something even an elementary school child could do. In contrast, I get up early every morning to prepare breakfast for the entire family and make my father's lunchbox. Additionally, I support our finances and take care of tax payments. Still, my parents have always favored Frida. She has been favored since we were children. I am considered pretty too, but Frida has a more refined face and is charming, which is why our parents have always treated her specially. Actually, one might think I should leave such a situation soon, but due to complex circumstances, it's not easy for me to move out, and I live with daily stress. Days passed, and I initially did not realize that my sister had left the house. I thought she was just going out as usual, but the next day, and the day after that, she was nowhere to be found. Realizing this, I began to have suspicions. Just then, as I was returning home and heading to my room, I heard an astonishing conversation from my parents in the living room. "I can't wait for the souvenirs from Hawaii. Frida is really lucky. Right now, she must be relaxing on the beautiful beaches of Hawaii and enjoying meals at delicious restaurants. I want to go to Hawaii too. Maybe we should go together next time." I couldn't help but interrupt. "Wait, what are you both talking about? Are you saying Frida is in Hawaii right now?" My parents responded with puzzled expressions. "Yes, that's right." I couldn't keep up with this unexpected development. But how can she afford the trip? She doesn't have any money. I've even been holding back on going shopping or to the arcade. Actually, she won it in a sweepstakes. Frida has always been lucky with these things. She had won a trip through a sweepstakes. I had no idea that had happened. Surprised, I decided to accept that explanation for the time being. The next day, while I was at work, I got an unexpected call from a credit card company I don't usually use. They informed me that there had been high charges recorded over the past 3 days. I had no memory of making such transactions. Nervous, I asked about the amount, and the customer support said, $10,000 has been spent over 3 days. I immediately guessed who the culprit was. It had to be my sister, enjoying her vacation in Hawaii. Though she had won the hotel stay and flight tickets, she needed her own funds for souvenirs and other expenses. Determined to uncover the truth, I contacted my sister. "Frida, what are you doing? Explain yourself." "Oh, I'm surprised you called, sis. I thought you were expecting souvenirs." "Cut the jokes. You've been using my credit card without permission, haven't you? Did you notice?" "It was an oversight," she replied nonchalantly, and my anger surged. At the same time, I regretted not realizing sooner that someone had entered my room. "What are you thinking? Using someone else's credit card fraudulently is a crime. It might be a problem if it were someone else's, but it's different among family members. Sylvia, you really should study more. How could you spend $10,000 in 3 days? It's impossible to spend such a large amount of money in such a short time. On this free trip to Hawaii, excluding the airfare and accommodation, I had to pay for all tourist activities, shopping and dining. I added luxury restaurants, shopping for branded goods, and transportation. Before I knew it, the expenses had exceeded $10,000. Exceeding $10,000 isn't excusable. What were you thinking? Why are you so angry?" "I used the card because it was about to expire." "That's why, sis. I'll leave the payment to you," she said cheerfully before hanging up. This incident was so sudden that I was left speechless. After that, she kept contacting me, but I decided not to respond at all. Eventually, she left a message on my answering machine. It seems I've gone and done it. I'm truly foolish." I couldn't help but laugh. In the evening, when I returned home, my parents hurried to greet me. "Welcome back. How can you act so nonchalantly? Frida is in a tough situation. Why did you stop the card? She's in trouble." "So what? My card was misused, so of course I stopped it," I replied. The moment I received a call from the card company and noticed transactions I did not recognize, I immediately stopped the card. As a result, my sister, who was unaware and tried to use the card, panicked and vented her anger at me. Since I consistently avoided responding, it seems she eventually sought help from our parents. "Your sister is in trouble abroad, and you're not going to do anything. Are you still saying that? Just because we're family, it doesn't mean it's okay to casually use someone's card to spend $10,000. I don't think you should be indifferent to that. How cold can you be? It's because of that attitude you never get to go on trips. She intended to buy souvenirs for us with the card. What's the problem with that? You're both unbelievable. How can you come to such a conclusion? You shouldn't be sleep-talking in daytime. Can't you two think normally? She is thinking of us and trying to have fun. Can't you be more thoughtful?" Thoughtful? Can you still say that after hearing this message? At that moment, I pulled out my smartphone and played the message left on the answering machine by my sister. "Make the card usable, you miser. Our parents' cards are already maxed out and can't be used for payments. Being so stingy about giving me pocket money for a trip, how useless can they be?" After hearing my sister's angry voice on the answering machine, my parents' anger quickly faded, and they hurried to their room to check the status of their cards. A few minutes later, I heard my parents screaming in panic. When I went to see them, their faces were red with intense anger. "I can't believe Frida used my card without permission. After all the nice things I've done for her, she even took the bank book and cards. I'm shocked by such betrayal." I coldly retorted, "Oh, wasn't that supposed to be a kind act by Frida to buy souvenirs? You said she was trying to have fun for us, right?" "Yes, that's right. But our money is still safe, right?" my parents muttered ambiguously. Seeing my parents' attitudes change once they knew their assets were safe, I could not hide my disappointment. Then why don't you increase the card limit and expedite the repayment so she can use it again? Why don't you let the kind Frida, who tried to buy souvenirs for you, have it?" "That's not possible, because we have no savings left. What will we do? Frida is in trouble without being able to eat or drink." After the commotion, my father suddenly pleaded with me. "Sylvia, we will start anew. We vow to keep supporting this family together. So please, help Frida." "What are you talking about? Everyone, does that even include me?" Moved by my father's actions, my mother also knelt before me. While I was momentarily confused, I said mockingly, "It's a bit late for apologies now," and my mother simply pleaded with me earnestly. "I will also change my ways. I swear to do my best to support everyone as well. From now on, I will do no wrong to you or to her." Despite the presence of my parents, laughter escaped me as I pondered deeply on how to respond. Later, while my parents went to check their room, I took out a credit card I had secretly found that still had a valid expiration date and had not been used at all. "Why don't you give this card to Frida and enjoy a family trip as well?" I suggested. My parents were thrilled with my words and they immediately contacted my sister. They hurriedly prepared for the trip while I reserved their flights to Hawaii online. After watching the whole scene with a smile, I dialed a specific number. 3 days later, when my sister returned from Hawaii with our parents, Frida said, "Big sis, thank you for letting us enjoy Hawaii. Oh, it's rare for you to come to pick us up. Are you expecting souvenirs?" Unfortunately, I didn't buy anything. It seemed they had thoroughly enjoyed their trip to Hawaii and had forgotten their gratitude to me just 3 days ago. After confirming this, I was ready to execute the plan I had been preparing and could hardly contain my excitement. "It seems like you had a lot of fun. Was that the last big moment of your life?" "What do you mean by last?" "Actually, I've decided to sell the house on a whim. I've already shipped the belongings to the new place and arranged for someone to pick us up." As I said this, my parents and sister were shocked and noticed the for sale sign posted on the entrance of our family home. "What is this? What does it mean? Did you really sell the house? What's going on?" In front of their astonished faces, I elaborated further. Actually, a real estate agent who is a friend from my university was interested in this land and had been asking to sell the house and land together for a while. I had always refused to sell because I thought maintaining this house, which was not built by our grandmother, was more cost-effective. Taking a breath, I continued. "However, I recently changed my mind. I realized that by selling this house and starting to live alone again, I could gain financial and mental freedom. That's why, while you guys were away, I confirmed my decision to sell with the real estate agent." "What? Selling it on your own is illegal." "That's right. This house belongs to Dad. There's no way you could do anything about it." My parents protested vehemently, but I responded calmly. "Oh, you seem quite energetic about it, but what would you think if you knew that the house and land are actually registered in my name?" "What?" "Dad, do you remember when you came to me because you couldn't pay the taxes, and I agreed to help on the condition that we change the registration to my name?" "Ah, that's right." I continued the story. "I didn't leave this house because it was registered in my name. I was looking for a way to get you out of the house and sell it. It was difficult to find an opportunity because you were always home. However, the chance to sell finally came when I sent you to Hawaii. As planned, everyone was out of the house, and I could finally sell the house and the land." "Ah. Oh, as I mentioned earlier, the luggage has already been sent to the new house, so don't worry. And the pickup should be arriving soon." "Pickup?" "Yes, Grandma is eagerly waiting for everyone. She can't wait." "Hey, Grandma, you mean Mom?" "Correct. After talking to her, she agreed to take everyone in to knock some sense into you. She told me to send the luggage. Everyone, get ready for daily pizza making and cleaning." My parents and sister were shocked. "We can't go to Grandma's." "That's right, we don't want to go." "Ah, I see. Well, you can do as you like. But without a house or jobs, how are you going to live? There's also the payment for that card. How are you going to pay such a large amount?" "What are you talking about?" "The card is in your name. You thought it was in my name." "Be careful, it's under a different name," I said. "Eh?" No way. My mother was startled. She took out the card I had given her and checked the name, losing color in her face. "Wait, this card is in Frida's name. The credit card I gave you was actually found in Frida's room. It was the first card she got when she started working, but she quit soon after saying the job wasn't a good fit. And it seems she hadn't used it. What I've spent too much. What should I do about this?" "What should you do, you ask? Since it's your name on the card, you have no choice but to pay. And make sure you earn enough to cover the stay, all of you, without causing trouble to Grandma." Frida resisted until the end, but our parents, having no other option, silently awaited Grandma's arrival. Accompanied by Grandma, they headed to her house and restaurant in Queens. There, under the strict guidance of Grandma and the veteran employees, they were taught to work, even as they shed tears. The $10,000 fraudulently charged to my card was repaid to me by Frida under Grandma's strict orders. Although I planned to settle everything by selling the house and land, Grandma managed to recover the living expenses I had paid previously and even took a portion of my parents' salaries to be transferred to me. Later, I moved to an apartment closer to my workplace and was able to start living alone again. The new life is going smoothly, and I am enjoying peaceful days, looking down at the city at dusk from the balcony. I felt relief from the long-felt pressure and a slight sense of loneliness. At that moment, the phone rang, and I hesitated a bit when I saw Grandma on the display. "Hello, Grandma," I answered, and she checked if I was doing well. "Yes, I'm fine," I replied. "That's good. Actually, it's about Frida and the others. They are starting to change significantly, especially Frida, who has begun to actively help with work. It also seems that your parents are gradually reflecting," said Grandma. She continued, "Sylvia, It must have been tough. I believe I understand how you feel. Sometimes family can be a burden, yet it is also something we should support. I hope you can forgive them someday." I listened to Grandma's words. Her voice carried hesitation and anxiety, but also a significant resolve. "There's no rush. Take your time and think it over until your heart settles," Grandma said kindly. I nodded deeply. "Understood, Grandma. I'll take my time and reconsider everything," I replied, and then quietly hung up the phone. As I looked out the window at the urban landscape, the sun slowly set on the horizon, and the darkness of night gradually enveloped the city. In the quiet of the dusk, a whirlwind of emotions churned within me. While anger and sadness still lingered, a small spark of hope for the future had begun to emerge. Returning to my room, my eyes were drawn to a family photo. In the photo, a young Frida and I smiled along with our parents. Looking at those happy faces, I nostalgically remembered the joyful days of the past and thought, if only we could return to those times, but reality quickly pulled me back. As time passed, my life gradually began to regain its old rhythm. At work, I was appointed the leader of a new project, and personally, I started to lead a fulfilling day-to-day life. One evening, after finishing the day's work, my cell phone suddenly rang. Hesitating slightly at the unknown number, I answered. "Hello, this is Sylvia." "It's me." Frida came, a voice different from the confident, arrogant tone of the past, now soft yet unstable. Unable to hide my surprise, I asked, "Frida, what's wrong? Did something happen? Sorry for calling out of the blue." "Actually, I want to meet you in person. I want to talk to you," Frida said quietly. Her words carried a humility and a sense of growth that I could never have imagined from the old Frida. "Why do you want to meet?" I asked, quietly waiting for Frida's next words. Frida's voice, though trembling, was calm and sincere, indicating her growth. "Big sis, I want to apologize from the bottom of my heart. I felt that a phone call wouldn't sufficiently convey my feelings, so I want to meet you in person to truly and earnestly apologize." Her words were earnest. Without interjecting, I quietly listened to her. "If you feel it's difficult to meet me, that's okay too. Your feelings are what matter most to me," Frida continued. After a moment of silence, I finally spoke. "All right. If that's the case, let's meet next Saturday at 2 p.m. at the cafe in front of the station." "Really? That makes me so happy." "Thank you, big sis." Relief was evident in Frida's voice. After hanging up the phone, I took a deep breath for a while to sort out my emotions. Despite questioning whether the choice I had just made was truly right, I harbored a hope that meeting her might change something. On the day of our meeting, I arrived at the designated cafe earlier than planned. Upon reaching the cafe, I could feel my heart racing, my chest tightening with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. As the clock's hands moved slowly, and just a little past the agreed time, the cafe door opened slowly, and Frida appeared. She looked different, with a simple yet earnest expression. Her face was without makeup, her attire simple, and most notably, her eyes conveyed a resolute change. She approached my table slowly and began to apologize quietly. "Big sis, I am truly, truly sorry." At that moment, I could physically feel her change and was momentarily unsure how to respond. "Frida," I began, and she continued her words, holding back tears. "While working at Grandma's house for the first time, I realized how much I had relied on you, how much I had taken you for granted. I finally understood how hard it has been for you, always suppressing your own desires to support us, the family." Frida, with tears streaming down her face, reflected on her past actions and repeatedly offered heartfelt apologies on the spot. Frida detailed how much she had relied on me in the past and the lessons she learned at our grandmother's house. Her story revealed many insights about her relationships with our parents and her self-awareness. I just sat quietly, listening to her words. Each word seemed to dissolve the long-held anger and sadness in my heart. As her story progressed, I could feel the heavy emotions inside me gradually lighten. "Thank you, Frida. I've fully taken your feelings to heart," I said. Afterward, we talked about various topics for several hours. We had an open dialogue about recent events in our lives and the challenges we were facing. This time became a valuable step in rebuilding our relationship. As we parted, Frida handed me an envelope with gratitude. The envelope contained money she had earned by working hard at our grandmother's house. "This is just the beginning, but I will do everything I can," Frida said. As I received the envelope, I felt her growth internally and my heart warmed. Months later, I visited my grandmother's house again and met my parents there once more. I was able to receive sincere apologies from them directly and could tell that they had grown, just like Frida. That night, we were able to share a meal together as a family for the first time in a long while, and I truly felt the warmth of family again. I might not be able to forgive everything immediately, but seeing my family's efforts to move forward step by step gave me hope for the future. Before heading home, my grandmother gave me some profound words. "Sylvia, you have certainly become strong, but as important as that strength is the kindness you continue to hold. Remember, that is the most important thing," she said. Hugged by my grandmother, I couldn't hold back my emotions and shed tears. I thought this might be the beginning of a new relationship with my family, and I felt the weight on my heart gradually lighten.
I'm Natalie Parker, 28, standing in my small Chicago apartment staring at a pile of birthday decorations for my dad's big day. My hands shake as I untangle a string of lights, not from excitement but dread. My sister is coming, and her sharp tongue always cuts deeper than I expect. Growing up, she would roll her eyes at my quiet life, mocking my boring job while flaunting her glitzy downtown success. Last time we met, she sneered, "You'll never measure up," and I swallowed it to keep the peace. Now I'm bracing for worse. I can already picture her strutting in, ready to humiliate me in front of everyone we love. At Dad's birthday, she didn't just cross a line, she pushed me to the ground, pointed and spat. "Your place is on the floor." The room erupted in laughter. I whispered softly, "I understand," and quietly walked away. Weeks later, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. My parents, my sister, even her husband, all begging to see me. But I left only one message, just 5 words, sharp and cold. "Look down at the floor. If you were in that situation like me, would you walk away quietly or fight back on the spot?" Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your answer. A few weeks before Dad's birthday, I was sipping coffee in my modest Chicago apartment, scrolling through LinkedIn on my laptop. I don't often check my sister Diane's profile. Her posts are a relentless showcase of self-praise, but curiosity tugged at me that morning. Diane Parker, my older sister, had just shared an update that hit like a slap. A photo of her in a polished downtown office captioned, "Another $1 million deal closed." Not everyone can keep up, especially those stuck in dead-end office jobs. The jab was unmistakable. She meant me, the office worker she's always belittled. My stomach twisted, but I kept scrolling, hoping it was a one-off. It wasn't. Another post from last month showed Diane at a glitzy gala with her husband Stephen Walsh grinning beside her. The caption stung deeper. "Surrounded by winners, not wannabes who think pushing papers is a career." I set my coffee down, the mug cold in my hands. Diane had no idea I wasn't just some clerk. For years, I'd been a financial investor, quietly funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars into her stockbroking firm through anonymous channels. My investments kept her company afloat during rocky markets times she'd bragged about outsmarting the crash. I never told her, or anyone, not even my dad James, who raised me to value the work over the spotlight. But Diane's words on LinkedIn, so public and cruel, brought back that old ache of being invisible in her eyes. Growing up, Diane would scoff at my quiet ways, my choice to live simply in our suburban neighborhood. "You're wasting your potential," she'd say, her voice dripping with pity. Now she was broadcasting it to her entire network. I clicked deeper into Diane's profile, my pulse quickening. A comment from a family friend, Margaret, our neighbor, popped up. "Wow, Diane, you're killing it. Your sister must be so proud." Diane's reply made my jaw clench. Natalie's too busy with her little desk job to notice. I wanted to scream. Instead, I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I remembered a Christmas years ago when Diane laughed in front of our cousins, saying I'd never amount to much. I'd brushed it off to keep Dad happy, but it hurt. My mother, Linda, gone years now, would have hated seeing us like this. Diane's taunts weren't new, but airing them online felt like a betrayal. I'd been her silent lifeline, pouring money into her firm to save her employees, not her ego. Yet she still saw me as less. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could comment, reveal the truth about my investments, and watch Diane squirm. But that wasn't my style. I'd learned her need to one-up me stemmed from her own insecurities. Instead, I messaged my business partner, Richard Coleman, confirming our next investment move, another boost to Diane's firm, hidden as always. I told myself it was for her team, not her. But her posts kept gnawing at me. I scrolled through more comments, some from Dad's old friends praising Diane's success, oblivious to her cruelty. One hit hard: "Diane, your family's lucky to have you leading the way." Leading, I'd been carrying her company for years. I closed my laptop, my chest tight. Diane's posts weren't just boasts. They were a public challenge daring me to step out of my shadow. But I didn't want to play her game. Dad's pride in my quiet choices meant more than Diane's approval ever could. Still, her taunts were growing bolder, and with his birthday looming, I sensed trouble brewing. I grabbed my phone to text Dad about the party menu, determined to focus on him. A few weeks after seeing Diane's venomous LinkedIn posts, I found myself at a sleek Chicago restaurant, its dim lighting and clinking glasses doing little to ease my nerves. Dad had insisted on a family dinner to catch up before his birthday, and I'd agreed, hoping to keep things civil. Diane sat across from me, her designer dress catching the candlelight, with Stephen, her husband, smirking beside her. Dad, ever the peacemaker, tried to steer the conversation toward old memories of our childhood in the suburbs. But Diane wasn't here for nostalgia. She leaned forward, her wine glass glinting, and fixed her eyes on me. "So, Natalie," Diane said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the chatter, "still slaving away at that little desk job of yours?" The table went quiet. I gripped my fork, my face burning, but I forced a smile. "It's fine," I said softly, not wanting to upset Dad. Diane's laugh was cold. "Fine. Oh, honey, you're such a failure compared to me. I close million-dollar deals while you're filing papers." Stephen chuckled, egging her on, and I felt the eyes of nearby diners on us. I wanted to tell her the truth, that my investments were the backbone of her precious firm, but I bit my tongue. Dad's shoulders slumped, his face tight with discomfort. Diane wasn't done. She waved her hand, dismissing my silence. "You know, some people are just meant for small lives," she said, loud enough for the next table to hear. "I mean, look at me. I'm carrying this family's name forward." My chest tightened, but I kept my eyes on my plate, refusing to give her the reaction she craved. Dad tried to change the subject, mentioning his plumbing work, but Diane cut him off. "Oh, Dad, let's not bore everyone with that," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. I saw the hurt flicker in his eyes, and it took everything in me not to snap. Then came the bill, $400 for Diane's extravagant orders of wine and steak. She slid it toward Dad with a smug smile. "You got this right. I mean, I'd pay, but I'm saving for our new condo." Stephen laughed again, and I felt a surge of anger. Dad, ever proud, pulled out his wallet, his hands trembling slightly. I wanted to stop him, to tell Diane she was out of line, but I knew it would only make things worse. "I'll cover it," Dad said quietly, his voice strained. Diane leaned back, satisfied, while I swallowed my rage. She'd humiliated us both, and, for what to prove, she was better. As the waiter took the payment, Diane leaned toward me again. "You should thank me for showing you how real success looks." She whispered, her words like a blade. I met her gaze, my voice steady, despite the storm inside. "I see it clearly," I said, low enough for only her to hear. She smirked, thinking she'd won, but I was already replaying her words, her arrogance, in my mind. I'd spent years propping up her company, saving her from collapse, and she dared to call me a failure. The thought of Dad's quiet sacrifice for her ego made my blood boil. I excused myself to the restroom, splashing cold water on my face to calm down. Diane's cruelty wasn't new, but this public display felt different, bolder, more vicious. I thought of Linda, our mother, who'd always preached kindness over competition. She'd be ashamed of Diane now. As I stared at my reflection, I realized this dinner wasn't just a one-off. Diane was escalating, and Dad's birthday was next. I dried my hands, my resolve hardening. I'd keep the peace for Dad's sake, but Diane was testing my limits. A few days after that humiliating dinner, I was in my Chicago apartment sorting through birthday decorations for Dad when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Diane standing there, her arms crossed, eyes blazing. She didn't wait for an invitation, pushing past me into my living room. "We need to talk, Natalie," she snapped, her voice sharp as ever. I shut the door, my heart sinking. I'd hoped to avoid her until Dad's birthday, but Diane clearly had other plans. She spun around, her designer heels clicking on my hardwood floor, and pointed a manicured finger at me. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing you are?" Diane said, her tone venomous. "Dad fawns over you like you're some saint while I'm out there making this family look good." I stood frozen, her words hitting like a wave. She was furious, not because of anything I'd done, but because Dad loved me, maybe more than her. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I'm not trying to compete with you, Diane," I said evenly. She laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in my small space. "Compete? You're not even in my league. Your pathetic little life, your cheap apartment, your boring job. It's a disgrace to our family name." I clenched my fists, her words slicing through me. She had no clue I'd been bankrolling her company, pouring hundreds of thousands into her firm to keep it afloat. I'd kept it secret, not for glory, but to protect her employees, and honestly, to avoid her gloating. But now, Diane stood in my home, tearing me down. "You need to stop acting like you're something special." She continued, pacing. "Dad's birthday is coming, and I won't let you ruin it with your sad, simple act. Change your ways, or you're not invited." Her threat landed like a punch. Not invited to Dad's birthday. The one I'd been planning for weeks. I thought of Dad, how he'd always defended me, even when Diane belittled me. I remembered a time years ago when Linda, our mother, was still alive. She'd caught Diane mocking my modest dreams and pulled her aside, saying, "Your sister's heart is worth more than your pride." Diane hadn't listened then, and she wasn't listening now. I wanted to tell her the truth, that her success rested on my investments, but I held back. She'd only twisted into another way to claim superiority. Instead, I met her gaze. "I'm not the one embarrassing anyone," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside. Diane scoffed, tossing her hair. "Keep telling yourself that. But if you show up to Dad's party looking like a nobody, don't expect a seat at my table." She stormed toward the door, pausing to deliver one last jab. "You're lucky I even bother with you." The door slammed behind her, leaving me standing in the silence of my apartment. My hands shook as I picked up a string of birthday lights, trying to focus on Dad. Diane's words stung, but her threat cut deeper. She thought she could control me, erase me from Dad's day. I thought of Richard, my business partner, and the investments I'd made in Diane's firm. Maybe it was time to rethink that support. I sat down, staring at the decorations. Diane's visit wasn't just a tantrum, it was a line in the sand. She'd always seen me as less, but now she was trying to push me out entirely. I wouldn't let her ruin Dad's birthday, but I also wouldn't let her walk over me anymore. I grabbed my notebook to jot down party details, my resolve strengthening. A few days after Diane's confrontation, I stood in Dad's suburban Chicago home, taping streamers to the living room walls. The scent of his favorite meatloaf baking in the oven filled the air, a small comfort as we prepared for his birthday. Dad shuffled in, carrying a box of old party hats, his smile warm but tired. "You're doing too much, Natalie," he said, setting the box down. I shook my head, tying a balloon to a chair. "It's your day, Dad. I want it perfect." But my chest tightened with worry. Diane's threat to exclude me from the party lingered, and I feared she'd turn this celebration into another stage for her cruelty. Dad noticed my silence and sat beside me, his calloused hands folding a paper tablecloth. "You're thinking about her, aren't you?" he asked, his voice gentle. I nodded, unable to hide my unease. "Diane's been intense lately. I'm scared she'll ruin this for you." Dad sighed, his eyes distant. "She's always been competitive, even as a kid. But you're my rock, Natalie. Don't let her dim your light." His words hit deep, stirring memories of Linda, our mother. She'd loved birthdays, always making them about family, not show. I remembered her baking Dad's cake one year, laughing as she smeared frosting on my nose. That warmth felt so far away now, with Diane's venom poisoning everything. I taped another streamer, my hands trembling. Diane's recent words calling my life a disgrace echoed in my mind. I hadn't told Dad about her visit, not wanting to burden him. He'd always tried to keep us close despite her jabs. "You think she'll behave tomorrow?" I asked, half hoping. Dad chuckled, but it was hollow. "I'll talk to her. She's my daughter too, but she needs to learn respect." His faith in Diane felt naive, but I didn't argue. I'd spent years propping up her company with secret investments, yet she saw me as nothing. The thought of her disrupting Dad's day made my stomach churn. We moved to the kitchen, where I checked the meatloaf while Dad arranged photo frames on the table, pictures of us as kids, Linda beaming beside us. "Your mom would be proud of you," he said, holding up a photo from my 10th birthday. "She always said you had a quiet strength." I smiled, but my throat tightened. Linda's values, kindness, humility, were what I clung to even as Diane mocked them. I wondered what she'd think of Diane now, parading her arrogance, while I silently kept her firm afloat. I pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task. "Let's make this the best party yet," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. As we hung a banner, Dad hummed an old tune Linda used to sing. It steadied me, reminding me why I was here. This party wasn't just for Dad, it was for the family we used to be. But Diane's threat loomed large. Would she really try to push me out? I pictured her storming in, her husband Stephen trailing behind, ready to belittle me again. I hadn't told Richard, my business partner, about her latest stunt, but I knew he'd urge me to stand my ground. I wanted to believe I could keep the peace, but Diane was testing my limits. I straightened a crooked streamer, my resolve growing. No matter what she did, I'd protect Dad's day. I pulled out a notepad to finalize the guest list, my pen moving swiftly. The day of Dad's birthday arrived, and the family home buzzed with laughter and chatter. Streamers hung brightly, the meatloaf sat steaming on the table, and guests, neighbors, old friends mingled with drinks in hand. I moved through the crowd, refilling plates, my eyes darting toward the door. Diane hadn't shown up yet, but her threat to exclude me still echoed. Dad caught my gaze, giving me a reassuring nod as he chatted with Margaret, our neighbor. I forced a smile, hoping the night would stay peaceful. But when Diane strutted in, Stephen trailing behind her, my stomach knotted. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, locking onto me with a smirk that promised trouble. She made her way over her heels, clicking loudly, drawing attention. "Nice little party," Natalie Diane said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Did you spend all week on this?" I ignored her, adjusting a centerpiece, but she stepped closer, her presence suffocating. Dad tried to intervene, raising his glass for a toast, but Diane cut him off. "Oh, let's not pretend this is anything special," she said, loud enough for heads to turn. I clenched my jaw, focusing on a stack of napkins. I'd promised Dad I'd keep the peace, but Diane was already testing me. As we sat for dinner, I took a seat near Dad, hoping to stay out of her line of fire. The guests laughed over old stories, and for a moment it felt like the family Linda had loved. But then Diane stood, her chair scraping, and pointed at me. "You know, Natalie, you don't belong at this table," she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. Before I could respond, she reached over and yanked my chair back. I stumbled, crashing to the floor, my hand scraping the hardwood. The room erupted in laughter, Stephen's loudest of all, as Diane loomed over me. "Your place is on the floor," she spat, her words sharp as knives. The guests' laughter grew, some assuming it was a cruel joke, but Dad's face paled, his hands gripping the table. I looked up at Diane, her smug grin burning into me. Every moment I'd held back, her LinkedIn jabs, her restaurant taunts, her threats at my apartment flooded back. I'd poured years of silent support into her company, keeping her afloat, and this was my reward. My face burned, but I stood slowly, brushing off my dress. "I understand." I whispered, my voice steady despite the humiliation. The laughter died down, replaced by awkward murmurs. Diane raised an eyebrow, thinking she'd won, but I locked eyes with her for a moment before turning away. I grabbed my purse and walked out the door, clicking shut behind me. Outside, the cool Chicago air hit my face. I leaned against the porch railing, my hands shaking. Diane's words weren't just cruel, they were the final straw. I thought of Linda, how she'd taught me to rise above pettiness. But this wasn't pettiness anymore. It was malice. I'd spent years funneling money into Diane's firm, believing I was helping her employees, protecting Dad's pride. No more. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Richard, my business partner, start the process to pull our investments from Diane's company. I hit send, my heart pounding. That decision wasn't just about money, it was about reclaiming my dignity. I glanced back at the house, the glow of the party spilling through the windows. Dad deserved better than Diane's spectacle. I knew she'd feel the consequences soon, but for now, I needed space. I walked to my car, my steps firm. Moments after I stepped outside, the front door of Dad's house swung open and Richard, my business partner, hurried toward me. His face was flushed, his suit slightly rumpled from a late flight into Chicago. "Natalie, I got your message," he said, catching his breath. I couldn't let this night end without setting things straight. I frowned, confused, as he gestured toward the house. "Come back inside. There's something everyone needs to hear." My heart raced. Richard wasn't one for theatrics, but his urgency pulled me back through the door, the party's chatter still lively within. The living room was warm with candlelight and laughter, though the sting of Diane's cruelty lingered in my chest. Dad stood near the cake, looking worried, while Diane and Stephen held court near the fireplace, her voice carrying over the crowd. Guests' friends like Margaret and Dad's old co-workers sipped drinks, unaware of the storm brewing. Richard cleared his throat, his presence commanding attention. "I apologize for interrupting." He began, his voice steady but firm. "But there's something you all need to know about Natalie Parker." Heads turned and Diane's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a skeptical smirk. I froze, my pulse hammering. Richard had never been to one of our family gatherings before, and I hadn't expected him to show up tonight. "Natalie has been more than a friend or colleague to me," he continued, scanning the room. "She's a financial genius, a silent investor who's saved countless jobs, especially at one company in this very room." Whispers rippled through the guests. Diane's smirk faltered, and Stephen shifted uncomfortably, his glass clinking against a table. I wanted to stop Richard, to keep my secret safe, but his words pressed on, relentless. "For years, Richard said, Natalie has funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars into Diane's stockbroking firm anonymously through our partnership. Her investments kept it afloat during market crashes, saving employees and their families." The room fell silent, forks pausing mid-bite. Diane's face drained of color, her eyes darting to me, then back to Richard. Without Natalie's funds, Diane's million-dollar deals would have crumbled long ago. Gasps echoed, Margaret's hand flew to her mouth, and Dad's eyes widened, his expression a mix of pride and shock. Diane stammered, her voice sharp. "That's ridiculous. My firm's success is mine." Stephen placed a hand on her arm, but she shook it off, her cheeks flushing. Richard raised a hand, calm but unyielding. "I have the records, Diane. Every transfer, every rescue, Natalie's work. She never wanted credit, but I won't let her be humiliated for it." The guests stared, some whispering, others gaping at me. I stood rooted, my throat tight, as memories of Linda's lessons in humility flashed through my mind. I'd hidden my role to avoid this exact spotlight, but Richard's truth had torn that veil away. Dad stepped forward, his voice soft. "Is this true, Natalie?" I nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "I did it for the people who work there. Dad, not for her." Diane's laugh was brittle, desperate. You're nobody. This is a lie." But the guests' murmurs grew louder, their faces shifting from amusement to awe. Stephen's jaw tightened, his usual smugness gone. Richard turned to me, his voice softening. "You deserve better than being pushed to the floor, Natalie. You're the one who's been holding things together." The weight of Diane's words, her cruel taunts, her public shaming lifted slightly, replaced by a strange mix of relief and exposure. I'd never wanted this moment, but Richard's arrival had changed everything. The guests began to approach me, their voices warm with questions and praise, while Diane stood frozen, her empire of pride cracking. Dad pulled me into a hug, his arm steady. "I always knew you were special," he whispered. I managed a small smile, but my mind was already racing toward what came next. Diane's world was about to shift, and I wasn't sure I was ready to see it fall. I stepped outside for air, needing a moment to breathe. Weeks after Dad's birthday, I sat in my Chicago apartment, the city skyline muted through my window. The news had broken. Diane's stockbroking firm had collapsed. Without my investments pulled after her public humiliation of me, her company couldn't weather the latest market dip. Headlines buzzed about layoffs, clients fleeing, and Diane's name tied to failure. I felt a pang of guilt, not for her, but for the employees I'd tried to protect. My phone vibrated with messages, but I ignored them, sipping coffee, trying to focus on work. Then my doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. I opened the door to find Diane, Stephen, and Dad standing there. Diane's usual polish was gone. Her hair was messy, her eyes red. Stephen looked deflated, his tie loose, while Dad's face carried a quiet plea. "Can we come in?" Dad asked, his voice soft. I stepped aside, my chest tight, knowing this wasn't a casual visit. They settled in my living room, the silence heavy. Diane spoke first, her voice cracking. "Natalie, we didn't know how much you did for us. I'm sorry for everything." Stephen nodded, his usual arrogance absent. "We were wrong to treat you that way." He said, his words stiff but earnest. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, their apologies ringing hollow. I'd spent years enduring Diane's taunts, her LinkedIn posts, her restaurant mockery, her threats at my apartment, her cruel spectacle at Dad's party. Each memory stung, and their regret felt like too little, too late. Dad stepped forward, his hands clasped. "Natalie, please. Your family. Can't we find a way to move past this? For Linda's sake?" His mention of our mother, her values of unity, hit hard. I saw the pain in his eyes, the weight of a fractured family, but my own wounds were too raw. "Diane," I said, my voice steady, "you called me a failure, a disgrace. You pushed me to the floor in front of everyone." Her face crumpled, but I pressed on. "I gave everything to keep your company alive, not for you, but for the people who depended on it. And you threw it back in my face." Stephen looked away, shame etching his features. Diane's voice trembled. "I was wrong, Natalie. I was jealous, stupid. Please, give us another chance." Her words echoed Dad's plea, but they couldn't erase the years of disdain. I thought of Linda, how she'd taught me to stand tall, to value dignity over pride. Diane's collapse was her own doing, built on arrogance I'd once overlooked. I'd carried her weight for too long, sacrificing my own peace. "Look down at the floor," I said, my voice low, echoing her cruel taunt from the party. Diane flinched, her eyes wide, while Stephen froze. "That's where you wanted me," I continued. "But I'm done letting you walk over me." Dad's shoulders sagged, his hope fading, but I couldn't bend, not this time. Diane's tears fell, but I felt no urge to comfort her. "I'm not reinvesting," I said firmly. "You'll have to face the consequences of your choices." Stephen opened his mouth, then closed it, defeated. Dad reached for my hand, his voice breaking. "Natalie, I just want us to be a family again." I squeezed his hand, my heart aching. "I love you, Dad, but family doesn't mean letting someone tear you down." He nodded, tears in his eyes, understanding but grieving. As they left, Diane's steps were slow, Stephen trailing behind her. Dad lingered at the door, his face etched with sorrow. "I'm proud of you," he whispered, then followed them out. I shut the door, the silence settling around me. I thought of Linda again, her lessons about strength and self-respect. Diane's fall wasn't my victory. It was a reminder that pride could destroy even the strongest foundations. I'd chosen my dignity, and that was enough. I sat at my desk, opening my laptop to start a new project.